an event on Burundi. Two UN officials speaking on the top floor of that building. So far, we didn't hear anything about third term, youth wing, use of peacekeepers that have, as peacekeepers, of security officials who fired at demonstrators. So, the ambassador of Switzerland has indicated that he favors media coverage of his remarks. So, we're going to... It's heading up to 12 for an event about Burundi. Some questions there.
Administration, once we showed in the face of the European representatives, two members of the South African Defense Forces, and one was a member of the South African Defense Forces during the apartheid, and another one was a member of the Encontro with Israel, the armored wing of ANC, and they were friends. They were speaking and saying, "Well, I am used to call him a cop."
That can be important to be helpful to discussion. Thank you.
We're going to take one more in the back. I think it's Matthew.
Sure.
Thanks
a lot. I really appreciate it. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press. I was listening from across the street and I was waiting to hear the term, third term. It seems like so much of this revolves around the constitutionality of the third term. So I guess I just wonder if the two, particularly the UN officials on it, do you think that the UN, obviously it's hard for it to speak about the country's constitution, but it seems by not speaking it was perceived as being basically on the side of the government by many. And I wanted to know, in terms of the UN, the tools that the UN has, whether continuing to use as peacekeepers soldiers that are photographed and widely seen on social media as having fired at unarmed demonstrators. Should the UN speak more clearly about using and empowering and these guys, and should it do more about freedom of the press? Rhonda asked about internet access, but at least 5 radio stations have been closed. The people fled the country. They wrote to the Secretary General, but it's not at all clear what the response by the UN was. And for Parfait, when the youth wing was being armed, or it was alleged to be armed, some people thought that the UN didn't say enough about it. It leaked. No one knows how it leaked, but it looked like the UN wasn't really going public enough. And is that a misperception? Thanks a lot.
Okay, so we're going to ask, we'll go across the panel. You can address those questions as you like. So, Parfait, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maureen. I wasn't expecting anything nicer from my dear friend, Matthew. Matthew, you know the story about the leak cable. We have spoken about it, and we have said, first and foremost, to the government that this has never been the way the UN communicates with states. But before that matter got into public knowledge, this was part of our daily conversations with the government. There was no secret about the fact that we were worried about rumors of youth affiliated to political parties, in particular the ruling party. Of course, it's more worrisome when it is affecting the ruling party. were enough. I'm not saying we're being armed, but we're having arms. And today is no more a question for debate. I think the government has acknowledged itself that there was an issue. And that's why regional bodies like the EAC and the AU also have made the disarmament of youth affiliated to political parties a major requirement for a conducive election in Burundi. It's not the UN, it's the regional bodies themselves. And respecting the principle of subsidiarity, everybody here also at the UN was waiting to see what the region would say. But the region has come very clear on that matter, and I think this should be appreciated. We did speak out, and we did ask for the authorities. We said two things. We said it was first an acknowledgement that unfortunately the disarmament process wasn't as successful as it should have been. And authorities themselves acknowledged that what was offered to them didn't make it possible to really absorb all the former combatants who were involved in during the rebellion. So when the numbers were fixed for those who would be part of the official security forces, it was still so many out there who would not be involved in any of these security forces, and were given a little package and went away with nothing but to resort maybe to their weapons for maybe even just a survival. So this was a concern, and that's why when the whole issue became public, our senior advisors, including Mr. Adamadian, went public to ask for an investigation, and we were not even willing to be part of it, but asked for the region with the authorities to get involved so that the process will be transparent, and for two main reasons. One was to say the level of proliferation of weapons was still too high for the country to go risk-free into this election. That's why we called for a further disarmament. And number two, we said it would be a good confidence-building measure when people will see that they will go into an election with a level of weapon that will be strictly, fairly reduced, and make it possible to get more trust in the electoral process. So, but at the end of the day, let me clear on that. We are dealing with a sovereign country, and Burundi, in all its history, as we could see in other places, it's been a very fortunate country. The country has never collapsed. So we are dealing with responsible authorities, and we expect them to do the right thing. And they have told their partners, and one of the points they said, they have already implemented 80% of the requirements by the AU, which of course the UN does not endorse because we have not been able to ascertain those. But bottom line is, it is an assertive government. It is a sovereign government that is telling us all that they're doing the right thing. So I think I will just stop here, Maureen, and agree with all what was said before, including by Paul and Oscar, that we should remain engaged. We should remain engaged the day after, and now we should remain engaged because there is still enough room to improve. And I simply want to tell the audience, for some of you who haven't been to Burundi yet, that you were right to come this afternoon. And I believe you are really right to be concerned. That we have all, as we engage in that country, we were all very hopeful that whatever will happen in Burundi would be an important indicator of what would happen region-wise. And we were also, though Burundi is maybe seen as a small country, but what is happening there could have, tremendous impact, either positive or negative, for the entire region. So as we engage in this country, I think we should never be, let's say, too never condescending, because indeed this is a country of very proud people, and I think the point was made, we have to engage the government in a responsible manner, but at the same time, because, and this is exactly the challenge that Burundi was faced with, we said we leave this country, but it would be for you to show the whole world that we were wrong to be worried about your future. And in my view, maybe we need not to be engaged, because Burundians themselves can be able and should be able to talk to themselves in a full ownership and national leadership on their own issues. But the reality is, I'm sorry, the reality is this is not yet possible. And people spoke about mistrust, and I think this is too in-depth into the psyche and the mindset of the people. That's why we are right to be engaged and worried.
Thank you, Harvey. And your coverage of that issue, and I'd like to ask Oscar, maybe you touch on some of the other things, status of the army, the role of women, and there's some other tough questions there about press, too.
I think Parfait will come back to the army, because that's the perspective of the knowledge. Just to state that I think what is important is that the Secretary General actually has been making quite a lot of statements relating to the situation in Burundi, and has actually been expressing concerns and the importance of respecting human rights, the freedom of the press, a credible, inclusive, free, fair electoral process. After all, the UN right now has an important electoral observation mission in place on the ground as we speak, has deployed several special representatives to facilitate dialogue. And I think, as Parfait was saying, it is extremely important that the UN actually supports the efforts of the African Union and the East African community that have been very clear in terms of their own interpretation about the crisis in Burundi, and coming up with a 15-point communique, which still remains valid to this day, and it's the areas and are the issues around which a lot of the support for a national dialogue process needs to happen around. So I think it's quite important, and I think the region has also made it very clear that it's extremely important to avoid an institutional vacuum. This is another issue of concern that's coming up within and outside of the country. So dialogue is the way forward, dialogue is the way out, and dialogue will be, at the end of the day, what is able to keep building trust or addressing the issues of mistrust and some of what has been the more recent possible deficits in governance.